Images and rich media is a great way to have your blog post really get a lot of attention that your competitors' blog post will not be getting. It makes your articles not only easier to digest, but more enjoyable. So that's why I love having images in my article. Now that said, there's a right way and a wrong way to have images, and that all is about your image SEO. In this video, we're going to be covering the file name, the alt text, the image size, as well as reducing the footprint of the page load speed. So let's start up at the top. Here's an article that I just wrote recently about does matcha stain teeth. We've already looked at this article. In this article, I have a number of photos that I put in to, again, make the article more enjoyable. Now, when it comes to images, there's a few things to keep in mind. First, every image has a file name. Now, Google looks at the file name of your image. Google looks at everything. And one of the reasons that Google does this is because if you search for does matcha stain teeth, then Google will look for that also in images, not just in text. That's how their image search works. So we want to make sure that our images have file names that are descriptive and are about what we're seeing. Now, when it comes to file names, you don't want to abuse the system. You don't want your file names to be like a giant long name. You want it to be simple. Google likes simple. At least that's my interpretation. Keep things clean and simple and easy, and you're going to have better results in the long run. So for most of my file names, it's just very simple. What is the image? So for example, it's kind of arty, but it's a bowl with matcha in it. So I give the file name here, matcha powder in chowan bowl. Simple. Here's another image of matcha in a bowl. And I call the file name bowl of matcha green tea. Now, you can see a few things here that I'm doing. One, I'm using synonyms of my main keyword and LSIs of my keyword in my image file names. You don't have to do that. If you have an entire article about Thailand and you have a picture of a palm tree, you can name the file name palm tree. You can keep it that simple, or you can do Thailand palm tree. This is like icing on a cake. Your SEO it's more important that you're being clean and easy and minimal with what you're doing than it is being hyper strategic and saying, oh my God, this article is about, this keyword, so I need to use 5 images with, the keyword in it 10 times. To a degree, I like to have one image on my website, in my blog post to have the actual keyword of the article. And for me, that's the first image. So here's the first image, and I just name the file name in the alt text. In fact, I'm just going to do this. Doesn't need the end of it. Does matcha stain teeth is the file name for the first image, which is my keyword. But then after that, it's much more relaxed. The file name just describes what's in the image in about 3 to 5 words. I try not to go over that in file name because then again, it gets too long and weird and unwieldy. All of my blog posts on Shizan and Zerby and all of my all the people who hire me to help with their blogs, when I go in and do the rich media images and things of that nature, I make sure that the file names are very, very simple and just tell you what they are. So this would be matcha in coffee cup. Simple, right? Gaiwan is a type of Chinese serving vessel. So this would be file name Gaiwan lid, Gaiwan bowl, Gaiwan base. Okay, so it's very easy and very logical. You shouldn't have to think about this too much. In the checklist, which is the last video in this module, I think I'll tell you to have your LSI or synonym in one of your images and to have your main keyword in one of your images. But besides that, try not to overthink about this. Just keep it simple. Just have your file name be what the image is. The next thing we need to talk about is alt text. Alt text actually is a little bit more important than file name. Alt text is a description of what is in the image that would be given to someone who's blind. So if someone who's blind goes through your website, they have tools that read to them what the images are. So it's accessibility. You do want your website to be accessible. What that means is alt text is less about SEO and more about creating a good user experience for someone who is disabled. That will help your SEO. But the focus is to help someone, right? So what that means is you want your alt text, it can be about a sentence long, to describe exactly what you're seeing in the image. Now, sometimes the file name and the alt text will be the same thing. This is a bowl of matcha green tea. The file name and the alt text here are pretty much the same thing. Not anything you have to worry about there. But this is a good example, Gaiwan, where it's probably not going to be the same thing. So Gaiwan lid. Now, a blind person won't really know what a Gaiwan lid is. So this would be something like Gaiwan lid for brewing tea on table. That's a good alt text. You're literally describing what you're seeing as if you were sitting across from a blind person and telling them what the image is. Very, very simple. So actually, if we go back to right here, what would the alt text of this image be? Well, simple. It would be toothbrush with matcha powder on it, right? Very, very simple. So alt text is like your file name. You're just describing what you see, except you, instead of doing 3 to 4 words long, it's about a sentence long, and you write it as if you're describing exactly what you see in the picture to someone who is blind. Okay, so we have the file name, we have the alt text. Next, we need to talk about the image size. Size of your image is very important. The reason it's important is because images typically take up the most memory and slow down the loading of your page more than any other element. That is a problem. Now, on a computer, on a desktop, it's not such a big deal, but on a phone, it is a big deal, because if you have too many images on your site and it loads too slow, people will get bored and hit the back arrow and not wait for your page to load. That's bad. That's really bad. Google will see that people are leaving your website. They don't care why. They don't care if it's because it's loading slow or because the content sucks. If they see people are leaving it quickly before they even give it a chance, it means that they're not going to show you up high in the Google ranking. So you want your images to load fast. So how do you do that? Well, that's kind of a bigger question. Some images like Shizhen, some images on websites like Shizhen, I want to be really big and high quality because this is a image-based blog. But other websites like Zerby, the images don't really matter as much because the only images on here are screenshots from phones. You know, like this is a screenshot of a phone. This stuff can be really, really small and, for lack of a better word, compressed and low quality, at least in terms of the file size. Now, what I like to say is with your images, a good file size is HD, which is 1920 by 1080. That is a good size. So you would make your maximum width of an image about 1920 or just 1080. Either way, the smaller your image, the faster it loads. Now, I'm going to show you 2 ways to do that. One is with Photoshop. So if I take this image here and I open this with Photoshop, and by the way, I'm showing Photoshop. If you don't have Photoshop, it doesn't matter. Literally every photo editing tool has this feature. But let's say that I have this photo. I open it in Photoshop or any image program. I go to image size and I make sure that the width of the image is 1080 or less. And the resolution is 72. 1080 at 72 resolution. So that will make the picture smaller. And then 1080 is a decent width. So there we go. We have this image. We have it saved at a smaller size. There's another element to this, which is profiles. This can get a little more complicated, but the most important thing here is if you use Photoshop or any image editing, you can save it by going to Edit, Convert to Profile, and save it as sRGB IEC 61966-2.1. You don't need to know what that means. but you can save it in that and it will reduce the file size. Everything I just said about that convert to profile, you can forget, by the way, because the next tool that I'm going to show you will do it all automatically. But I am just showing you that in case you want to get more nitty gritty and you have Photoshop, you can reduce the file size just by doing what I showed you. Anyway, now that we have a smaller image, we're going to save it either as a PNG or a JPEG, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to save this at a quality of anywhere from 7 to 8. So I'm going to do 7. Photos, by the way, you want 8. Graphics can be 7. So I'll save that. Now, check this out. If we go here and we compare, get info, we reduce the file size of the screenshot I took from 469 KB to 62 KB. That is a massive reduction. And to your eyes, they're going to look exactly the same, especially on a phone. Now, here's that tool that I was going to tell you about before that does everything automatically. It's called Tiny PNG. So you go to Tiny PNG, you drag your image into it, and it will automatically compress it. You don't have to do anything. And then it will tell you the old file size and the new file size. Now you can see, because I compressed the image and made it smaller in Photoshop, this tool helps make it even smaller. But we basically went from 400 to 46 to 30. And again, the quality looks perfectly fine. So that's how you reduce the file size of your image. The only thing you really need to remember out of everything I just told you was to make your file size about 1920 to 1080 pixels wide, and to use Tiny PNG, which automatically compresses it. And really, that's it. That's sort of all image SEO that you need to worry about. You put in a good file name. That's 3 to 4 words that describes what you're seeing. You put in your alt text, which is a description to a blind person of what the image is, and you reduce the file size. The only other thing to do is what I said we'll do in the SEO checklist video, which is very simply let's say you have your images on your website or on your blog post, have 2 or 3 of your images have a keyword or a synonym or an LSI of your keyword, and that just kind of is extra sprinkles on top of your cupcake. Not necessary to do that, but it adds just a little bit of extra that can help with your SEO. On that note, that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.